So it's getting warm out, springtime. Carolyn and I are really getting excited about food preservation again. This time of the year, it seems like it just kind of kicks in. This is the time you're supposed to start preserving all your foods. And of course, Carolyn's been busy planting. We got tomatoes and cucumbers and beans. And so we're talking about all summer and how many jars we got left. And right now, I think we have like 6 or 9 trays of jars that we've used. And then I got a few more jars over there in the well house. Couldn't tell you how many I got there. So, I mean, we got enough that we can start canning if we needed to. This year, we're just going to go to Save a Lot and we're going to buy that 10-pound bag of chicken. Right now, last time we went to the store, it was 49 cents a pound, so that's $4.90 for the chicken. Last year, it got up to 69 cents a pound. So it came back down in price. They sell those in the summertime at more expensive rate because people take those out to their barbecues. If you can buy them in the winter and can them in the winter, it'd be a lot cheaper. So if we do it in the spring, we might be able to catch some of these sales at 49, 59 cents a pound. Then of course, we're gonna can all kinds of vegetables. I think primarily beans and tomatoes. Now, tomatoes, we can water bath. We don't have to use the pressure canner. Because tomatoes have acid in it, you can water bath it. It doesn't have the botulism risk. Now, with a water bath, we'll be able to do that over a fire. I've canned tomatoes over a fire before. If I recall, the jars are completely submerged in the water in these pans right here. We've got 2 of them. It's been years since I've done it, so I'll have to read the instructions again. But I mean, it's just not hard. Whereas with a canner, you got to get it up to certain pressures for so long. That way you can kill the botulism. And that's when you can can meat, is in your pressure canners. But green beans you have to pressure can because they don't have the acid in it. Now, we've tried lots of different experiments when it comes to preserving food. Our first attempt, now this is something that I've never done before. Our first attempt was we tried to preserve food by curing it. So we bought the Morton Cure Salt. And it worked pretty good. Now, all the prepper channels will tell you that you can preserve meat for a long time by using the salt cure. The problem is it still leaves some moisture behind. And moisture is the problem. You got to get the moisture out of there. And it doesn't get it all out. It does last 2 weeks to a month. So what we decided to do is, if we're going to cure our meat, we could put it in the refrigerator for a couple weeks until our freezer reduced the amount of food came out of the freezer, and then we could put that into the freezer, the cured meat. And that seemed to work out pretty good. That saves us a few trips to the store because we could buy more meat, cure it, and then in 2 weeks put that into the freezer after the freezer was emptied a little bit. But it still was not a permanent solution and was still relying on the freezer. Our goal was to get away from the freezer because we run our freezer or refrigerator off the solar panels. I would like to get away from the solar panels completely as far as food preservation. In the beginning, we talked about getting a freezer and getting more solar panels, but if we could figure out how to do it without freezing it, it would be so much better. So then we can. Now, everything that we've done in the past except the cure. We didn't do the cure. I cured bacon, but we treated that the same as always, just put it in the fridge and the freezer. But as far as canning and everything else, we've done in the past. Now, a lot of preppers will say you can smoke your food. That's long-term preservation. That's not true. If you smoke your food, it's going to go bad in about 2 weeks. Essentially, the only thing you're doing is removing some of the moisture. It's no better than the cure. It gets rid of some of it and does preserve it for a bit longer, but it's not a long-term solution. When we're looking at nearly a year with canning so far, canning is supposed to be only, I don't know, a year or 18 months according to the, I don't know, the FDA or I guess it's Food and Drug Administration. Now, that being said, we have stored food, canned food, much longer. But that's just, so if you're gonna can food, that's about what you should shoot for. I'm not suggesting you do anything else. Store at your own risk is what I'm saying. But Carolyn has decided that not only do we want to can tomatoes, she wants to dehydrate tomatoes. If we find some apples, She wants to be able to dehydrate apples and just all kinds of different things, so we can have food preservation that way. It's a sun dryer. You put it in outside in the sun and it dehydrates your food. Well, it's still too cold right now to do it. So what we did was we put it over the wood stove. She was able to dehydrate some apples. Now that's only about a 2-week storage. So what she wants to do now is she wants to dehydrate the tomatoes. The thing you got to do with tomatoes though is you got to keep them vacuum sealed, or well, anything that you dehydrate. If you vacuum seal these apples, they'll last, according to the web pages that I find, 30 years. Because now you're not introducing the bacteria. There's not a lot of moisture in it. So I started looking up dehydrating meat. And the same thing applies. Now I've dehydrated squirrel in the past. And I say that every time somebody will say, "Oh, squirrel, that's just a rat." Well, I'm telling you, I grew up on squirrel. I thought that was a normal meal. You know, rabbit, you go hunting for rabbit, and squirrel, that was just a thing. So for those who are going to criticize me for eating squirrel like I'm some sort of loser, there are a lot of people in the world that do eat squirrel. And it's not even an acquired taste. It's actually pretty good tasting. They eat nuts. Now, I guess if you're in the city and your squirrels are eating out of trash cans, yeah, you're not going to want to eat those. But the squirrels around here, they're only in the trees and they're eating nuts, and it's a very healthy meal, very lean, just like rabbits. Rabbits have so little fat in it that if you only ate just rabbit, nothing else, you could actually get what's called a protein poisoning. They have so much protein that you get too much of it because there wouldn't be anything else in your diet that's diluting it out. Now, my ex-wife was from Iowa. I guess in Iowa they didn't have a lot of squirrels. So she had a hard time eating squirrel. But when we put it in the dehydrator and we flavored it up with soy sauce, A1 steak sauce or whatever, Worcestershire sauce, she seemed to eat it okay. So it was a nice snack. So I could go squirrel hunting. There's something to say about snacks. I mean, it's a protein snack. I've also dehydrated deer. My neighbor one time gave us some deer meat. I was having a few years of really bad luck getting a deer. Man, it was terrible. And he knew about it, so he got a deer. So he gave us I don't know, like 10 pounds of it. And we dehydrated it in the oven. And the thing is he mixed it all up. It was already mixed up. Everything was in it, all the spices and seasonings. All we had to do is stick it in the oven and dehydrate it. Now, the same thing applies with meat. It's going to go bad in about 2 weeks if you don't do something with it. So if you vacuum seal it, then you can store the meat for 30 years according to the websites. This is an option that I think we're going to give a shot at. We bought a vacuum sealer last year. Now, a lot of people use a brake bleeder hand pump to vacuum seal. Right now we have a vacuum sealer that will vacuum seal the bags. Now this is good. This vacuum sealer works well with the hand pump with jars. I showed you last year that we vacuum sealed a bunch of jars. Well, as a matter of fact, they're still out here in the well house. So we vacuum sealed a bunch of rice, and we even used Tadler lids. And a Tadler lid is a reusable lid. I showed you that last year when we started canning. So we vacuum sealed all that, and we vacuum sealed a bunch of rice and sugar. I forget what else. What was it? I don't know, it was something else. And so we vacuum sealed all that, and we were able to store it outside. So that's what we're going to give a shot to, is we're going to use bags like this. I did a cost analysis on this last year, and it wasn't terrible in comparison. And the thing is you can reuse these. When you do it like we have here, we got it inside a bag. The bag, like a penny a piece. It wasn't really bad at all. And so now we can reuse them, and we have been. What we do is when we open this up, we'll save it, and then we'll go to the grocery store. We can use this bag again to store the fresh meat in the freezer in these bags. They don't seal up too well because, they get pretty small after a while. But you get 2 or 3 uses out of them. That really reduces the cost on the bags. Carolyn and I are going to buy some like fajita strips, meat, and then we're going to dehydrate it. Now what we're going to do, we're not going to use the sun. We can dehydrate it in the sun. We looked that up with that little basket, but she doesn't want to get her basket all messed up with meat stains, and I understand that. So we have our wood fire cooking place. I've showed you this before. So she can convert these into a rocket stove. She can also use this as an oven. She uses this quite a bit as an oven. It has a temperature gauge. In order to dehydrate, I think you dehydrate it at 145 degrees. So we wouldn't use the rocket stove. We'd just feed this with some wood and keep this temperature at 145 degrees. So at 145 degrees, you can dehydrate it. I have to look up the times again. I forget the times, but it's all on Google. It's not hard to do. And so when you get it down, I think maybe 6 hours, then you take it off, vacuum seal it. Of course, you wouldn't be able to do it all in one day. You'd cook it one day, and the next day you could vacuum seal it. And the only reason we're thinking of other food preservation ideas is once we use up all the jars, we're kind of out of shelf space. You know, we live in a tiny house. So we got to find something that takes less shelf space. Well, these vacuum seal bags, you saw that we leave outside in the well house, or we put it in the attic. It really wouldn't matter what we did with it. With the jars, we have to keep that environmentally controlled. You can't freeze because the water in it would freeze, the jars would break. But with the freeze dried, we can leave it outside, put it in a shed. We could do all kinds of things with it. There wouldn't be any risk of damage. So if you could throw it in a bucket, throw it outside, it'd last for years. And that would be a good snack with the tomatoes. What she wants to do is if she cans those, she can ground that up into a powder, and then she'd be able to make her tomato sauce, her spaghetti sauce. So there's a lot of options, and it gives us more storage space. So if you'll click onto this up next box right here, I'd really appreciate it. Take you over to my other channel. I hope I can inspire you to think outside the box when you're living your dreams. Thanks for watching.